Hi everybody, and welcome to Independent Arts Storytime. We're back to The Fib by George Layton, and we've only got 2 left. So this afternoon's story is The Mile. What a rotten report. It was the worst report I'd ever had. I was dreading bringing it home to my mum to read. We were sitting at the kitchen table having our tea, but neither of us had touched anything. It was gammon and chips as well, with a pineapple ring. My favourite. We have gammon every Friday because my Auntie Doreen works on the baking counter at the co-op and she drops it in on her way home. I don't think she pays for it. My mum was reading the report for the 3rd time. She put it down on the table and stared at me. I didn't say anything. I just stared at my gammon and chips and pineapple ring. What could I say? My mum looked so disappointed. I really felt sorry for her. She was determined for me to do well at school and get my O-levels and then my A-levels and go to university and get my degree and then get a good job with prospects. I'm sorry, Mum. She picked up the report again and started reading it for the 4th time. It's no good reading it again, Mum. It's not going to get any better. She slammed the report back on the table. Don't you make cheeky remarks to me. I'm not in the mood for it. I hadn't meant it to be cheeky, but I suppose it came out like that. I wouldn't say anything if I was you after reading this report. I shrugged my shoulders. There's nothing much I can say, is there? You can tell me what went wrong. You told me you'd worked hard this term. I had told her I'd worked hard, but I hadn't. I did work hard, Mum. Not according to this. She waved the report under my nose. You're supposed to be taking your O-levels next year. What do you think's going to happen then? I shrugged my shoulders again and stared at my gammon and chips. Don't know. She put the report back on the table. I knew I hadn't done very well in my exams because of everything that had happened this term, but I didn't think for one moment I'd come bottom in nearly everything. Even Norbert Lightoller had done better than me. You've come bottom in nearly everything. Listen to this. She picked up the report again. Maths, inattentive and lazy. I knew what it said. I know what it says, Mum. She leaned across the table and put her face close to mine. I know what it says too, and I don't like it. She didn't have to keep reading it. Well, stop reading it then. Mum just gave me the look. English language is capricious and dilettante. What does that mean? I turned my pineapple ring over with my fork. Oh heck, was she going to go through every rotten subject? Come on, English language. Mr. Melrose says you're capricious and a dilettante. What does it mean? I don't know. I hate Melrose. He's really sarcastic. He loves making a fool of you in front of other people. Well, he could stick his capricious and dilettante and his rotten English language and his set books and his horrible breath that nearly knocks you out when he stands over you. I don't know what it means. Well, you should know. That's why you study English language, to understand words like that. It means you mess about and you don't frame yourself. My mum kept reading every part of the report over and over again. It was all so pointless. It wasn't as if reading it over and over again was going to change anything. Mine knew. I kept my mouth shut. I sat there staring at my tea. I knew her when she was in this mood. Well, I can't understand how come you did so well at religious instruction. You got 75%. I couldn't understand that either. I like Bible stories, Mum. She wasn't sure if I was cheeking her or not. I wasn't. Bible stories? It's all I can do to get you to come to St Cuthbert's one Sunday a month with me and your Auntie Doreen. That was true, but what Mum didn't know was the only reason I went was because my Auntie Doreen slips me a few bob. And the only reason that you go then is because your Auntie Doreen gives you pocket money. Oh, that's not true, Mum. Blimey, my mum's got eyes everywhere. She put the report back into the envelope. Hooray! The Spanish Inquisition was over. She took it out again. Trust me to speak too soon. I mean, you didn't even do well at sport, did you? Sport! He's not a natural athlete. Did you do anything right this term? I couldn't help smiling to myself. No, I'm not a natural athlete, but I'd done one thing right this term. I'd shown Arthur Bocock that he couldn't push me around anymore. That's why everything else had gone wrong. That's why I was lazy and inattentive at maths and capricious and dilettante at English. And that's why this term I'd been so miserable, because of Arthur blooming Bocock. He'd only come into our class this year because he'd been kept down. I didn't like him. He's a right bully, and because he's a bit older and he's good at sport and running and things, everyone does what he says. That's how Smoker's Corner started. Arthur used to pinch his dad's cigarettes and bring them to school, and we'd smoke them at playtime in the shelter under the woodwork classroom, and we called it Smoker's Corner. It was daft really. I didn't even like smoking, it gives me headaches, but I joined in because all the others did. And well, I didn't want Arthur Bocock picking on me. We took turns to stand guard. I liked it when it was my turn. It meant I didn't have to join in with the smoking. Smoker's Corner was at the top end of the playground opposite the girls' school, and that's how I first saw Janice. It was one playtime. I was on guard when I saw those three girls staring at me from an upstairs window. They kept laughing and giggling. I didn't take much notice, which was a good job because I saw Melrose running across the playground with Mr. Rushton, the deputy head. I ran into the shelter and warned the lads, "Arthur, Tony, Melrose and Rushton are coming." There was no way we could have been caught. We knew we could get everything away before Melrose or Rushton or anyone could reach us, even if they ran across the playground as fast as they could. We had a plan, you see. First, everybody put the cigarettes out, but not on the ground, with your fingers. Didn't hurt if you didn't wet them enough. Then Arthur would open a little iron door that was in the wall next to the boiler house. Norbert had found it ages ago, must have been there for years. Tony reckoned it was some sort of oven. Anyway, we'd empty our pockets and put all the cigarettes inside. All the time we'd be waving our hands around to get rid of the smoke, and Arthur would squirt fresh air spray that he'd nicked from home. Then we'd shut the iron door and start playing football, or tig. Melrose never let on why he used to come storming across the playground. Never said anything, but we knew he was trying to catch the smokers, and he knew that we knew. All he'd do was give us a look in turn and then march off. But on that day, the girls had been standing staring, giggling at me. He did say something. "Watch it, all of you. I know you're up to it. Just watch it, especially you, Bocock." We knew why Melrose picked on Arthur Bocock. "You're running for the school on Saturday, Bocock. You better win, or I want to know the reason why." Mr. Melrose is in charge of athletics, and Arthur holds the school record for the mile. Melrose reckons he could run for Yorkshire one day if he trains hard enough. I didn't like this smoking lark. It made me cough, it gave me a headache, and I was sure we'd get caught some day. "Hey Arthur, we better pack it in. Melrose is going to catch us one of these days." Arthur wasn't bothered. You're just scared. You're just scared. You're a yeller." Yeah, I was blooming scared. "I'm not. I just think he's going to catch us." Then Arthur did something that really shook me. He took his right hand out of his blazer pocket. For a minute, I thought he was going to hit me, but he didn't. He put it into his mouth instead and blew out some smoke. He's mad. He kept the cigarette in his hand, in his pocket, all the time. He's mad. I didn't say anything though. I was scared he'd thump me. On my way home after school that day, I saw those girls. They were standing outside Wilkinson's sweet shop, and when they saw me, they started giggling again. They're daft girls. They're always giggling. One of them, the tallest, was ever so pretty though. The other two were all right, but not as pretty as a tall girl. It was the other two that were doing most of the giggling. "Go on, Glenda. Ask him." "No, you ask him. You're the one who wants to know. You ask him." "Shut up." The tall one looked as embarrassed as I felt. I could see her name was written on a school bag. Janice Webster. The other two were laughing and telling each other to ask me something, and I could feel myself going red. I didn't like being stared at. "Do you want a photograph or summat?" They giggled even more. "No, thank you. We don't collect photos of monkeys, do we, Glenda?" The one called Glenda stopped laughing and gave the other one a real dirty look. Don't be so rude, Christine. Then this Christine started teasing her friend Glenda. Ooh, just because you like him, Glenda Bradshaw, just because you fancy him. I started walking away. Blimey, if any of the lads had come by and heard this going on, I'd have never heard the end of it. The one called Christine started shouting after me. Hey, my friend Glenda thinks you're ever so nice. She wants to know if you'll go out with her. Blimey, why did you have to shout that so the whole street could hear? I looked around to make sure no one like Arthur Bucock or Norbert or Tony were around. I didn't want them to hear these stupid lasses saying stuff like that. I mean, we didn't go out with girls because, well, we just didn't. I saw the pretty one, Janice, pulling Christine's arm. She was telling her to stop embarrassing me. She was nice, that Janice. Much nicer than the other two. I mean, if I was forced to go out with a girl, you know, if someone said, you'll die tomorrow if you don't go out with a girl, then I wouldn't have minded going out with Janice Webster. She was really nice. I often looked out for her after that, but when I saw her, she was always with the other two. The one time I did see her on her own, I was walking home with Tony and Norbert, and I pretended I didn't know her, even though she smiled and said hello. Of course, I sometimes used to see her at playtime, when it was my turn to guard Smoker's Corner. I like being on guard twice as much now. As well as not having to smoke, it gave me the chance to see Janice. She was smashing. I couldn't get her out of my mind. I was always thinking about her, you know, having daydreams. I was forever rescuing her. One of my favourite rescues was where she was being bullied by about half a dozen lads, not hitting her or anything, just mucking around. And one of them was always Arthur Bucock. And I'd go up very quietly and say, are these lads bothering you? And before she'd had time to answer, a fight would start, and I'd take them all on, all six at once, and it would end up with them pleading for mercy, and then Janice would put her hand on my arm and ask me to let them off, and I would. And that was my favourite rescue. And that's how the trouble with Arthur Bucock started. I'd been on guard one playtime, and I'd gone into one of my rescues. It was a swimming bath rescue, and Janice would be swimming in the deep end, and she'd get into trouble, and I'd dive in and rescue her, and bring her to the side, and put my towel round her, and then walk off without saying a word. Bit daft, really, because I can't swim. Not a stroke. Mind you, I don't suppose I could beat up 6 lads on my own either, especially if one of them was Arthur Bucock. Anyway, I was just pulling Janice out of the deep end when I heard Melrose shouting his head off. Straight to the headmaster's study. Go on, all 3 of you. I looked round and I couldn't believe it. Melrose was inside Smoker's Corner. He'd caught Arthur, Tony and Norbert, and he was giving Arthur a right crack over the head. How had he caught them? I'd been there the whole time, standing guard, thinking about Janice, and I just hadn't seen him coming. Oh, heck. I warned you, Bucock, all of you, go and report to the headmaster. And as he was going past me, Arthur showed me his fist, and I knew what that meant. They all got the cane for smoking, and Melrose had it in for Arthur, even though he was still doing well at his running. And the more Melrose picked on Arthur, the worse it was for me, because Arthur kept beating me up. That was the first thing he'd done after he got the cane, beating me up. He reckoned I'd not warned him about Melrose on purpose. How come you didn't see him coming? He's blooming big enough. I just didn't. I couldn't tell him that I'd been daydreaming about Janice Webster. He must have crept up behind me. Arthur hit me right on the ear. How could he go behind you? You had your back to the wall. You did it on purpose, you yellow belly. Then he hit me again on the same ear. After that, Arthur hit me every time he saw me. Sometimes in the stomach, sometimes in the back of the neck, sometimes he'd raise his fist. I think he was going to hit me, and he'd just walk away laughing. Then he started taking my spending money. He'd say, oh, you don't want that, do you? And I'd say, no, you have it, Arthur. I was really scared of him. He made my life a misery. I dreaded going to school, and when I could, I'd stay at home pretending to be poorly. I used to stick fingers down my throat and make myself sick. I suppose that's when I started to get behind with my schoolwork, and anything was better than being bullied by rotten Arthur Bucock. And when I did go to school, I'd try and stay in the classroom at playtime, or make sure I was near the teacher who was on playground duty. Of course, Arthur thought it was very funny, and he'd see if he could hit me without the teacher seeing. which he could. Dinner time was the worst because we had an hour free before the bell went for school dinners and no one was allowed to stay inside. It was a school rule, and that was an hour for Arthur to bully me. I used to try and hide, but he'd always find me. By now he didn't seem to have anything to do with him being caught smoking and getting the cane. He just seemed to enjoy hitting me and tormenting me. So I stopped going to school dinners. I used to get some chips or a Cornish pasty and wander round. Sometimes I'd go into town and look at the shops, or else I'd go in the park and muck about, anything to get away from school and Arthur Boocock. And that's how I met Archie. There's a running track in the park, a proper one with white lines and everything, and one day I'd spent all dinner time watching this old bloke running round. That was Archie. I went back the next day, and he was there again, running round and round, and I got talking to him. "Hey, mister, how fast can you run a mile?" I was holding a bag of crisps, and he came over and took one, and grinned at me. "How fast can you run a mile?" I'd never tried running a mile. "Dunno, never tried," and he grinned again. "Well, now's your chance. Come on, get your jacket off." He was ever so fast, and I found it hard to keep up with him, but he told me I'd done well. I used to run with every day with Archie after that. He gave me an old tracksuit top, and I'd change into my shorts and trainers and chase round the track after him. And Archie said I was getting better and better. "You'll be running for Yorkshire one of these days." I laughed and told him to stop teasing me, and he gave me half an orange. He always did after running. "Listen, lad, I'm serious. It's all a matter of training. Anyone can be good if they train hard enough. See you tomorrow." And that's when I got the idea. I decided to go in for the mile at the end of school sports, at the end of term. You had to be picked for anything else, but anyone could enter the mile. There were 3 weeks to the end of term, and in that 3 weeks I ran everywhere. I ran to school, I ran with Archie every dinner time, I went back and ran on the track after school, then I'd run home. If my mum wanted anything for the shops, I'd run there. I'd get up really early in the mornings and run before breakfast. I was always running. I got into tons of trouble at school for not doing my homework properly, but I didn't care. All I thought about was the mile. I had daydreams about it. Always me and Arthur, neck and neck, and Janice would be cheering me on. Then I dropped Janice from my daydreams. She wasn't important anymore. It was just me and Arthur against each other. I was sick of him and his bullying. Arthur did well at sports day. He won the high jump and the long jump, and he was picked for the half mile and the 440, and he won them both. And then there was the announcement for the mile. "Will all those competitors who wish to enter the open mile please report to Mr. Melrose at the start." I hadn't let on to anyone that was going to enter, so everybody was very surprised to see me when I went over in my shorts and my trainers, especially Melrose. Arthur thought it was hilarious. "Well, look who it is. Do you want me to give you an half a mile start?" I ignored him and waited for Melrose to start the race. I surprised a lot of people that day. Nobody more than Arthur. I stuck to him like a shadow, and he went forward, I went forward. If he dropped back, I dropped back. This went on for about half the race, and he kept giving me funny looks. Couldn't understand what was happening. "You won't keep this up, just watch." And then he suddenly spurted forward, and I followed him. And when he looked around to see how far ahead he was, he got a shock to see that he wasn't. It was just like my daydreams. Arthur and me, neck and neck, the whole school cheering us on, both of us heading for the last bend. I looked at Arthur and saw tears rolling down his cheeks. He was crying his eyes out. I knew at that moment I'd beaten him. I don't mean I knew I'd run the race. I wasn't bothered about that. I knew I'd beaten him, Arthur. I knew that he would never hit me again. And that's when I walked off the track. I didn't see any point in running the last 200 yards. I suppose that's because I'm not a natural athlete. Sport. He's not a natural athlete. Didn't you do anything right this term? Blimey, my mum was still reading my report, and I'd started to eat my gammon and chips. They'd gone cold. Well, another great story there. I've just got one left now in the fib, so I'll be back with that for you very soon.